Everyone is wrong. Diversification isn't helping your portfolio, it's hurting it. If you want to finally break free from your 9 to 5 and live life on your own terms, you need to be willing to be undiversified when the market gives you asymmetric opportunities. And if you think I'm wrong, just watch this.
Well, my idea of risk control is a little non-conventional. I like putting all my eggs in one basket and then watching the basket very carefully.
That was famed investor and maybe one of the best to ever do it, Stanley Druckenmiller. While he was at the helm of his incredible hedge fund over 30 years, listen to this, he averaged 30.4% per year. By the way, he never had one down year, not one. My name is Nick, and at the age of 42, I walked away from my 9 to 5 and I started living life on my own terms. I sell weekly options and I live off a small dividend portfolio. It's enough to put my kids through private school and pay for all of our needs. If you like reading, I wrote a book. It can help you get started in the markets. It's called The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and it's available on Amazon and any good bookstore near you. That's not today's topic. No. Today's show is about why I have over 50% of my portfolio in Ethereum and Bitcoin-related investments. I am over-leveraged, I'm not very diversified, and it's just the way I want it. Welcome to 15-Minute Money, the show where I search the financial world for the most up-to-date investment ideas, market trends, and income streams so you don't have to. Let's get into it. So that little sound bit was nice from Stanley, but I want to hear a little bit more about what he says about diversification.
Business schools, they teach, I think, a lot of nonsense called risk-adjusted return and diversification. Ouch. As a money manager, if you look at a normal portfolio, most people will make 70-80% of money that year on 2 or 3 ideas, even though they'll have 30 or 40 things in their portfolio. My concept was to put into those 2 or 3 ideas that I had the most conviction in.
So Stanley goes full port on 2 or 3 big ideas, and then he watches them very closely. If you think Stanley just got lucky or crazy, guess what? He's not alone. Warren Buffett, who I respect immensely, had a diversified portfolio for most of his career, but from 2015 to 2025, his Apple position made up over 50% of his portfolio. It was also responsible for a huge portion of his performance. Berkshire made over 400% on Apple in those 10 years. Do you need some more proof? I love index investing. In fact, I think it makes the most sense for the average person. But in case you didn't know, the S&P 500 isn't diversified either. How can that be? It holds 500 of America's greatest companies. True, it does hold 500 companies, but it's not equal weighted. And you don't want it to be. 37% of the S&P 500 is made up of the Mag 7. The S&P 500 last year averaged 25.7%. It didn't average, it made 25.7%. If you were in the equal weighted S&P 500, 11.7. The S&P 500 is not diversified. Stanley Drucker's not diversified. Warren Buffett's not diversified. And at the moment, I'm not diversified either. I am over 50% in Bitcoin and Ethereum related investments. But why Bitcoin and Ethereum? Let's talk about why and why I'm bullish, and then we'll get into my individual holdings. My top 3 reasons to be bullish on Bitcoin and Ethereum are the post-halving cycle, massive institutional flow, and the dollar sucks. Now let's quickly look over each one. The post-halving cycle. If you don't know, Bitcoin goes through these 4-year cycles, and most people believe it has to do with the halving. The 4th Bitcoin halving occurred April 2024. The halving event is when Bitcoin miners, the people who are keeping the whole thing going, their reward gets cut in half. So therefore, if they could make 1 Bitcoin, let's say a month, now they're only making half a Bitcoin per month. These Bitcoin events have caused huge surges in the market price. Typically 12 to 18 months after a halving is when we see the next top. Right now, 12 months has already passed. 16 months was last month in August. I hope that wasn't the top. So I'm leaning towards like 18 months because I think October is a very bullish month historically for Bitcoin, and November has been as well. Some people don't believe in the halving process at all. They think that it's just kind of a coincidence. Some of the big Bitcoin guys are thinking that it really has to do with M2 monetary policy, which talks about the liquidity in the markets. So whether it's the M2 policy, the money supply, or the Bitcoin halving, the results have been impressive. Look at this chart. You've got 3 years up, 1 year down. 3 years up, 1 year down. 3 year up, 1 year down. There is definitely a pattern, no matter if it has to do with the halving cycle, monetary policy, or both. It seems historically there's 3 good years, and then there is a crypto winter or a Sir Tanks-a-Lot, whatever you want to call it. I think we're approaching 2026 is going to be a down year for Bitcoin. So now is the time where I'm going big time into crypto right now. The second thing is massive institutional flow. Institutional flow into Bitcoin has evolved from like a trickle and early adoption to a measurable force, especially the last 2 or 3 years. In late 2020, we saw companies like MicroStrategy begin to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's like the institutional investor was waking up. Now it's not just a speculative investment, but an actual treasury. And then 2021, 2022, when the crypto winter was going on, institutional investors were still pushing Bitcoin big time. It had lots of trading volume. Then you got the approval of the ETF in January 2024. Watershed moment. Now everybody can get into it. No more complicated wallets, no more seed phrases. Bitcoin is now available in your 401k in the average mom and pop shop. When the Bitcoin ETFs were released, money went crazy. BlackRock's IBIT ETF was the fastest ETF to ever cross $1 billion assets under management. Yeah, that's a big deal. Of every ETF ever in the world, BlackRock's IBIT was the first ever to get $1 billion. So if you don't think institutions were interested, you don't think mutual funds were interested, they were very interested. They didn't want to take the risk of the wallets. The wallets are out of the picture. You can just click in, buy a Bitcoin ETF, and voila, you have exposure to Bitcoin. The third reason I am positive on Bitcoin right now is the dollar sucks. Historical data, often measured against the USD index, DXY, consistently shows a negative correlation with the price of Bitcoin. When the dollar strengthens, Bitcoin falls. When the dollar weakens, Bitcoin rallies. If you didn't know, the dollar's down 10%. The primary mechanism behind this is the Federal Reserve's policy. When the Fed raises interest rates, like it did in 2022, it makes the dollar more attractive, it increases the cost of capital, and it pulls money out of things like Bitcoin. Conversely, when the Fed signals that it's going to be easing rates or making some cuts, also known as quantitative easing, this injects liquidity, the M2 we're talking about, and this makes things like Bitcoin more desirable because money is cheaper. I'm not going to go crazy into this, but let's look at this one chart about Bitcoin versus housing prices. So 2016, the average price of a U.S. home was $288,000 and change. That would have cost you 664 Bitcoin. Fast forward 4 years. 2020 is now $329,000, give or take, and it only costs you 45 Bitcoin. Fast forward to this year, 2025. Housing across America is up to $518,000, but it only costs you 5 Bitcoin. And that is why I'm bullish on Bitcoin right now. We are at the end of that 3-year bull market. We are approaching the crypto winter in 2026. And I think we can squeeze as much pressure as we can out of Bitcoin right now and have a huge end of the year. When Bitcoin gets to about $150,000, I'm going to have some things to think about. Do I want to sell? Do I want to sell all of it? But right now, I'm trying to ride this wave. I'm trying to go big into a concentrated asset, and I'm trying to make as much money as possible. I'm not purely into crypto. I do have some of the ETFs. I've got some MicroStrategy. Let's take a look at exactly what I'm into. So here we have my crypto tracker. You can see what I've got. I didn't do a good job hiding it. It is what it is. I have Bitcoin, pure crypto Bitcoin up at the top here. I have $212,000 into Bitcoin, and I am currently up on that position. So that's, as you can do the math, that's about 2 full Bitcoin. Ethereum, it's a pure crypto play. I've got about $7,000. That's about 2 Ethereum also. I am more pro towards Bitcoin. I actually got started in Ethereum in 2017. I used to mine Ethereum. I got rid of it and bought some other stuff. You have kids, you make bad investing decisions. Maybe you can make better decisions in the future. The point is, I've got about 2 Bitcoin and I've got about 2 Ethereum. The next thing in my portfolio is MSTR. That is MicroStrategy stock. It is a crypto-related stock is how I have it labeled. And I've got about $70,000 or about 200 shares of MicroStrategy, and I'm currently down in that position. BMNR is the next crypto-related stock I have. It is BitMiner. That's Tom Lee's treasury company. I've got about $31,000 into that. I've been doing cash secured puts into BitMiner. In fact, let's look at BitMiner's chart. BMNR. Gotta go stocks. So BMNR, this is the weekly chart. We can't look at the weekly. We gotta look at the daily. So BMNR is a wild ride. Currently up pre-market. That's good to see. I've done a whole video on BMNR. A lot of you guys like that, but as you can see, it was a know-nothing, this kind of Bitcoin miner company. And then they announced that Tom Lee was going to be taking over as head and chair, and they were going to become an Ethereum treasury company. It spiked all the way up to what, $160 per share from like $4, which is pretty wild. They were down trading $3 and $4, went up to 160, came back down to earth, got as low as $30 per share, kind of went back up, back up. Now it seems to be riding some of that trend. We're seeing a push forward as Ethereum goes up. BitMiner is going to go up, and I have some good eggs in that basket with BitMiner. I had some cash secured puts last week. I already had 200 shares of BitMiner. I wanted some more exposure, so I got pretty aggressive with those cash secured puts. I got assigned 400 shares last Friday, which is just where I want to be. I now have 600 shares of BitMiner, and I am up just a little bit on a $31,000 position. So then I've also got some options on BitMiner. I know I went heavy. I bought 2 call options that expire in Halloween. It's only $2,000 position, but as you know, with options, you're using leveraged money. So I'm controlling 200 shares of BitMiner, and I think I bought the 60 call. So if it gets up to $60, $70, $80, those positions are going to be up 100 to 300%, hopefully by October, or hopefully by Halloween. Now I've got some MSTR options. I just sold these last Friday. I already had 200 shares of MSTR, but the premiums were going good because Bitcoin was down, therefore MicroStrategy was down. So I sold the cash secured put for $800 because the premiums were really good. So I'm not really in that position. It says $31,200, but I will only have that 31.2 if I get assigned. I probably won't be assigned the way Bitcoin is moving, but we'll move on. There's 2 other things that I'm doing that I have been doing almost all year is these Bitcoin-related ETFs. MSTY, ticker symbol MSTY, is a play on MicroStrategy, as you might imagine. It's from a company called YieldMax, and it's pretty wild. Let's see if I can look it up. MSTY has a huge dividend. So it's $13. It's down. I'm down about $4,000 or $5,000. You can see year to date, it's down negative 48% because Bitcoin has been falling. I got into it at a decent price. The dividend yield, as you can see here, says 354% if you bought it at right now's price. I've been getting about 150%, and that's paying every single month. So even if we go back to my chart, it says I got $10,000. My stock price is worth about $6,000. But I've collected $5,000 in dividends, so I'm basically break even. I paid 10 grand for the stock. I'm down to about $5,000 or so, but I'm up $6,000 in stock. So I actually am up a little bit on that MSTY position. It's pretty crazy. Obviously, you shouldn't be getting into these types of things unless you really think Bitcoin's going to do well, which so far it's done all right. So my final crypto investment is similar to MSTY. It's BITO, which is another leveraged ETF fund on Bitcoin. It's on Bitcoin only. It's not specifically on MicroStrategies. Again, it's trading about $20 per share. I'm up a little bit in this. It pays a much weaker dividend, only, as you can see, 53.87%. And that does pay monthly. I'm getting like $500 or $600 a month in this particular ETF. So part of that is in my dividend portfolio that I'm living on. If you leverage these plays, you can make big money, right? So I'm not as dumb as I come across on camera. Maybe I am, who knows? I am over leveraging for sure. I'm going big into crypto right now until the end of the year. I think Bitcoin's going to hit $150, hopefully $200,000 by the end of the year. And to be honest, it's going to be hard for me to liquidate all of this. I will sell the stocks. I'll sell most of the Bitcoin. I do have another portfolio of Bitcoin for my kids that I'm just putting $50 a month in for each of my boys as a long-term. Don't even think about it. But again, I'm retired. I'm living life on my own terms. I'm living off of the income that I generate from trading and from options investing. So I have to sell this stuff at some point, and I think it's going to be around November, hopefully $150,000 or above. So like Stanley, like Warren, like the S&P 500, I'm not very diversified right now. I'm going a little bit more concentrated on Bitcoin, and I hope it's going to pay off. This has been 15 Minute Money, a show I do every single Sunday to try to keep me from going back to my 9 to 5. This is definitely not financial advice. You should not follow anything that I'm doing. This is just an educational channel to show you what I am doing, so you can either mock me in the comments or write some positive things in the comments or follow along for the entertainment. We'll see you next Sunday. Thanks for joining me today on 15 Minute Money, the show where I search the financial world for the most up-to-date investment ideas, market trends, and income streams so you don't have to. I'm your host, Nick Bradley. We'll see you next week.